Welcome to episode 7 of Monday Morning Moccasins. Look at us. Episode 7. And guess what? This is our very first sponsored podcast. Podcast episode, I should say. So, this cup of coffee that I'm drinking right here is brought to me by Rancho Project Media. The man over there, his name is Justin. And what he does is he does live event production, live streams, and post-production audio. And yeah, he bought me my coffee for this morning's episode. He has a link in the description below. You can hit him up on Instagram if you might need him for any of your live production or live stream events. And you could also get in contact with me and I can help you get in contact with him. But that is the perfect segue into how you can support the show. I stole this idea from him. He wanted to support the show in some way, and we were talking about what we're going to do, and then this idea came up. So, if you want to support the show, you can buy me coffee. Via Venmo. I changed my Venmo name to @MondayMorningMoccasins, and the link to that will also be in the description. But yeah, you can just Venmo me some coffee money, and I give you a little shout out, and it's a really good way to support what I'm doing over here. You can Venmo any amount. The price of a cup of coffee, usually around $5, depending on where you go. Sometimes it's up to $10 if you're going bougie, but you can donate any amount, and it is much appreciated. So, buy me coffee. Cheers. Well, with that out of the way, what was I up to? My spring break is over. And my God, doesn't that go by so fast all the time? Spring breaks are like, blink of an eye, it's over. It was pretty fun. I didn't do much. I didn't do anything really. And then I realized about halfway through I've got a book report due because professors still assign book reports for some reason. So I have been working on that. And I've also got an assignment due in another class tomorrow. So like, she literally like pulled the whole like, well, you don't have any assignments due over spring break, except you have an assignment due immediately following spring break. The day you get back, there's something due. So, of course, you got to think about it and work on it over your spring break. Dude, I fucking hate professors. I hate them. Hate them so much. They're slimy. Well, I could go off on a rant about school, as I normally do. But, yes, teachers work hard, and I appreciate them. But sometimes they're a real pain in the ass. But anyway, spring break's over. Yesterday, we went downtown, and I got to see some live music again, which was fantastic. It was a band called Keith Haring. It was their first show. And it was just like a little 4-piece, little guitar, bass, keys, and drums. And they were playing like a lot of cool, like slow, like lo-fi psychedelic rock jams, which is pretty cool. But the guitar player was phenomenal. The keys player was fantastic. And towards the end of their set is when they kind of broke loose a little bit. And then it was like, that was like some Hendrix shit. He was throwing his guitar around. The set ended with him have broken a total of 2 strings, and microphone ended up on the floor. Strap came off the guitar. He was trying to stand on the railing, and oh my God, I was loving it. And the 50-year-old, Davis grandmas, they were loving it. It was a good time. And so, yeah, I met him after a set. We got each other's information, making the connections in the band world around here. Still trying to put my little punk band together. He put me in contact with a bass player that might be interested. So hopefully that comes out or turns into something. My EP is done. I finished that, which was awesome. I did that over spring break. So if you're interested in listening to some pop punk sounds with some lackluster singing, the link is in the description. The whole idea behind doing that was that I've wanted to do something like that for a long time. I have so many bands I look up to, and that like creating music is something obviously I've always been into, just with different, avenues and paths. But I felt like I really wanted to kind of go back to like the roots sort of like how I started in music, and that was the little garage band I was in 8th grade. And we never really put together something real. Towards the end of our short life as a band, we started to play original songs, and it was cool. It was like, okay, well, yeah, we're gonna do this. And then I went into the story last episode about how we went on our permanent hiatus, but I never got the chance to really like put together an album or an EP or anything that's just like all original music. And so I just really wanted to give that a shot. Pardon. Just wanted to give that a shot and see how it turned out. And I'm pretty proud of it. I mean, I understand I didn't want to sing. I never wanted to sing, but I don't have anybody. So it was like I kind of just had to do it. And so with some practice, not as much as I should have, but with some practice and with some auto-tune, I think it's a fairly decent product for mixing and recording entirely by myself. So, like I said, if you want to check it out, link is below. I think it's pretty cool. Another project that I'm starting, because you know me, I'm just going to start all these projects before I finish anything. Let's be mediocre at so many things and never be fantastic at one thing. I am going to build a guitar, and it's going to be my own brand of guitars called Masterson guitars. I had this idea. I love looking at like boutique builds of guitars. So, for anyone that's not familiar with sort of the guitar world, you have the big boys that are like Fender and Gibson. You don't even have to know guitars to know those names. But underneath that, there are thousands of little boutique brands that just hand make guitars, and they're absolutely beautiful. And some they do like the Relic, where they purposely make it look old. And it's kind of like an art. It's a mixture of like woodworking and art. And that's always attracted me because in the recent years, I've really started to learn how to kind of work with my hands. So like I started doing construction for a little bit with some buddies, and then I bought a truck and just tinkered with that, learning how to work on trucks. And I like building things. I like creating, and I like sort of taking something that's like nothing and sort of turning it into a decent, end product. The guitar, like building guitars, it's been intimidating in the actual woodworking process. Because I don't have the resources. I don't have access to wood. I don't have, tools. But putting together a guitar using resources that are available to me, like for example, this one that I did, I had the guitar as the template, and then what I made myself was the pick guard, and I soldered the new electronics in it, and so it's like that smaller stuff I can totally do in my current situation. So what I ended up doing was buying a kit. It's a DIY kit. It's an unfinished, not put together guitar. Batteries not included, basically. And I'm going to paint it. I'm going to wire all the electronics. I'm going to cut the headstock myself. Here, let me grab this. So the kit I chose purposefully comes with a headstock, basically the top of the guitar where the tuners are, that's uncut. That is basically just, it's brandless. You can get into some trouble if you cut it a certain way that like Gibson cuts theirs. So what I did was I sort of put together this idea. Let's see if that focuses or not. So that's sort of like what the headstock of my guitar will look like. And the Masterson logo is definitely ripped off from Gibson, but is not entirely the same. Because I love the Gibson look. Gibsons are my favorite guitar, and so I wanted to do something similar. But obviously, with my imagination, I can see this going somewhere where Gibson might possibly sue me in the future. I doubt that I'll ever come close to that. A cease and desist from Gibson would honestly be a great honor and a compliment, but that will never ever happen. So I could cut it however I want. I can cut it exactly the same as Gibson and nothing would ever happen. But I want to be original. I want to bring something new. I don't want to just put together a Gibson Les Paul and then put my name on it because that's boring. I want to actually have my little flair to it. So when that's done, I'm sure you guys will see the whole build process and all that. I'll be working on that soon. I'm just waiting on it to get delivered. Hey, something that's pretty exciting is everything that's going on with the pandemic and how it's starting to kind of fizzle away. Our county, the YOLO County, we are in the orange tier, I believe, which is one up from the red, which means gyms open and movie theaters open, and like 50% indoor restaurant capacity is allowed. And I've been going to a lot of live music things, and so it's really, really looking good. I know some places that have gone back fully, like no restrictions, 100% capacity. Places like Texas and stuff, I know they're kind of seeing a little bit of consequences for that. So I'm hoping that sort of the slow return back to normal that mostly everyone else is doing is going to help, solidify it. Because oh my God, if we go back to normal and then all of a sudden they're like, hey, just kidding, we're locking down again, I'm going to lose my mind. Like I will absolutely lose my mind. I will leave the country. Hollow threats, I probably will never leave the country. But it's looking good. And I really want to be able to go to some huge concerts this summer, and into the fall. So I'm like praying. There are so many things I want to do that are just, I'm getting blue-balled by this pandemic. While I was putting together all of my notes for this episode, I got a notification that someone had started following me on Instagram. And that someone was Beetle Percussion. Now, what's so funny and interesting about that is, I don't think I've ever talked about this, but back in 2017-ish, it was before the 2018 drum corps season, Tony Talecki, who is I don't know if he still is, but at the time was a Beetle percussion artist, and he designed his own drum pad, and it was the bus pad. And what that pad was on the top was, it's their normal, they use the bamboo, the recycled bamboo, and I believe they used like the recycled rubber. That was the normal playing surface, but on the flip side was just wood. And the purpose of that was that you had a normal drum pad for quiet hours or just being normal. It wasn't too noisy. But when the bus got loud after shows or whatever, and you're trying to drum and have a sectional, you can drum on that wood part and you could hear yourself better. So it was a volume, it's better, in terms of volume. And then also just drumming on a wood plank on a surface like that is extremely unforgiving. You can basically fix your rhythms and accuracy to where it'd pretty much be undeniable on an actual drum or a different drum pad. Because drumming on that flat surface, you have no margin for error in terms of rhythmic accuracy and, tone and pressure and all that. So that was the idea of that pad. And I was super into it. I thought it was great. And what I ended up doing was reaching out to Beetle Percussion, and I had the idea. I said, you send me out a bus pad. I'm going to take it on tour this summer and use it exclusively. I will only use that drum pad, and it'll be a full summer long trial basically. And when I get home, I will have a huge review of it. I will talk about, times that it was really, it came in handy and how it worked within my snare line and how it performed on the bus and what I thought of it and all that. I thought it was a pretty good idea because you then now had a possible review in a real world situation. Because I think by that time, Tony was right around aging out. I think he aged out in 2017. I could be wrong. I don't remember, but I don't know if he really had the opportunity to bring that pad on tour. But I thought that was such a good idea. Ended up falling through. I don't really remember exactly what happened. I don't think they were into sending it out to me for free because they were pretty small still, kind of a small business. And I think they offered a 20% off code, and I was like, okay, that's fine. But then it never. I sent them my address, I think, and then it just nothing ever happened, which was disappointing. But they just started following me on Instagram, so I'm hoping that might be a sign that they are gonna want to work with me, because I would love to. I would love to work with them. I really want one of those table drum pads. I remember Tony brought one of those out. Or I don't think he did, but Beetle was out in Dayton in 2017? 2018? 2017? 2016? I don't remember. 2017? God, I'm bad with years. I'm getting old. But anyway, there was one... or was I even in Dayton? I don't know. Anyway, at one point, Beetle Percussion brought out the table pad, and the whole Broken City snare line was drumming on it, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I want one of those pads because I want to drum on a table. I think that's cool. But anyway, I think that's it for sort of hanging out. What did I say? Yeah, told you guys how you can sponsor the show. Talked about all that. I think that's it. I only have one bit of news, but let's get into it. All right, so yeah, like I said, only one piece of news. DCI doesn't have any news. No one's really posting anything on their Facebook pages. WGI is sort of, modified WGI is in full effect. Everyone's doing their thing. There's some shows happening, which is pretty cool. MCM's doing that online thing. Really weird how they went about it, where it was released on Flow Marching first. Then they made an episode available they made the first episode available on their website, which I watched, But then going forward from there, it went back to you had to pay for it. So I just sort of lost interest in that because I think at this time, no one's going to be wanting to spend money on watching a drumline video. So that's ironic that I said that. Spend money to support this show to watch my videos related to drumline, but I don't think anyone's going to spend money to watch drumline videos in this current pandemic. Anyway, yeah, I just thought that was weird. So it also just felt super disorganized. I don't know. I think I mentioned this before. Like, this whole thing was super confusing, and some people seem to know how it was working with who's competing in WGI and what the videos are and the live streams and the shows, but maybe I'm just still way too out of touch. But this was just extremely confusing for me, and I had no idea where to go and what to watch because things are on Flow Marching, things are on websites, things were on YouTube, and I just didn't know what was happening. And now we're approaching finals for this year, and I still don't know what's happening. Anyway, going back to the news, the one piece I have is this Invest in Indoor mini telethon that WGI is doing, and it's on Friday, April 16th. And basically what it says is this program will kickstart virtual finals weekend and help pave the way to returning to live events in 2022 by raising money for the WGI Invest in Indoor campaign. Now, like I said, how it's weird that they're wanting us to spend money to watch these videos. I think this is really what the money needs to go to, because WGI is like, it takes a lot of money to do this thing. And with basically 2 years down the drain, I can totally see how WGI might be hurting when we get back into this. There might be less shows. There might be, less judges. It's because you got to pay the judges. They've done a pretty good job with finding people that want to volunteer, so I don't think they'll have an issue with like staff in the facilities and all that. But yeah, I mean, WGI shows up to UD every year, and they got to pay the university to. Sheesh. I really hate how this camera stops recording all the time. But yeah, they got to pay the University of Dayton every year when they go out there. But also WGI that weekend is like, I'm exaggerating, but it's like 90% of Dayton's economy is like the WGI weekend. Like, we all go out there and spend so much money that Dayton almost relies on WGI going out there every year, and they rely on us. And so not only WGI itself, they're kind of running into some money issues, but I imagine the city of Dayton is sort of missing us over there. But anyway, at this event, this Invest in Indoor, you can donate, and that will lay the groundwork for future generations of young people to discover their potential through competitions in color guard, percussion, and wind ensembles. Basically, it's just a good way to just keep it alive, I don't know if they're hurting terribly, and I think there'll be enough coming back to it to where WGI and DCI will never go away, but this is definitely a good way to support the activity, and so I wanted to highlight this and suggest that you at least tune in and show the support, and donate if you can and all that. So it's on April 16th, and it sounds like it's just going to be a live stream on some platform. They'll probably be streaming something, but you can go to wgi.org/donate starting 8 p.m. Eastern time, so 5 p.m. Pacific time, on Friday, April 16th. And that's where you can donate. But I'm sure they're going to have some sort of, like I said, it kickstarts the virtual final. So however they're doing that, you could do it simultaneously. But anyway, yeah, that's Invest in Indoor, and that's all I have for the news. I totally forgot to do Hall of Dame last week. So I'll remember this time. Ready? Hall of Dame. Cool. This week's Hall of Dame is this guy. Boom. Senyo Boombox cassette player and recorder, AM, FM, all that good 80s stuff. 90s? Is this from the 80s or the 90s? Looks 90s. Could be 80s. Early 90s? I don't know. I did not do any research. But basically, here, let me put it back in the shot here. We're talking about you. There you go. So basically, I bought this from my local record store because I am into owning all forms of media. I like to play records. I play records a lot. I've got a decent collection. I've got a lot of CDs because that's sort of what I grew up on, the CDs. So I have tons of those. But I'm starting to collect tapes. And we all didn't know this, but Green Day is my favorite band. I know, shocking. I've never talked about Green Day ever before. But my goal is to collect sort of as much physical media of theirs that I can. The first goal is to own all of their studio albums in all three formats: record, CD, and tape. So I've started with this guy. This is my favorite album of theirs, called Insomniac. So I've got it on tape. I've got two other ones coming in the mail right now. I've got Dookie and Kerplunk coming, which is album 3 and 2 in that order. And yeah, it's honestly like tapes, they sound like garbage, especially old one. This is from 95. This is a 25-year-old tape, and it sounds like it. But it's freaking cool because it's how everyone used to listen to music. And I want to actually make my own tapes with the EP that I just did. I want to record it using this onto a tape and have a tape of my EP. And I think that'd be kind of fun. I think the whole physical media thing sort of brings back like intention behind listening to music. It's very easy just to pop on Spotify and Apple Music and just Pandora, if anyone still uses that, and just kind of take for granted what music is, because creating music, we all know, is an extremely involved process. You have, musicians working together with engineers in a studio, and it's the grind. It's, there's emotional investment into it. Fights start because of it. Beautiful things are created out of it, and that sort of all stops as soon as the album or song is available to stream, because there's no I feel like the equation should include the fan and should include the listening of the music by outside sources, being the fans, and that equation doesn't really fit when you just stream it, when you just press play on your phone and then you're just like, it's background music, it's, you pop in, the music every time you go drive, and it sort of, I think, just pulls out, like I said, like the intent of it and the importance of what creating music is. And you could connect this to what's going on right now with this activity. It's like anybody that's marched can understand how difficult it is to create a show and to show up to rehearsal every weekend or wake up at 7 a.m. on a gym floor every day and just have to produce excellence. And then imagine doing all of that and then you walk into Lucas Oil and there's no one there, but it's available for live stream. Like it's like with the movie theater thing. Like I never got hyped about us being on them showing the show in the movie theater. I think it's pretty cool because not everyone can go out to Indy, and not everyone is in the area that a drum corps show can go to. But Fathom Events did a pretty good job at broadcasting, the semifinals of DCI in areas that drum corps doesn't touch. The only time that was freaking awesome was when my girlfriend, who wasn't my girlfriend at the time, she went to the movie theater to watch me perform. And that was pretty damn cool because I was on the field knowing that she's watching because I was super into her. And I was like, okay, yeah, this show's for her, not to get all sappy. But it definitely still is important, with like the people actually experiencing the show. And so with this, you want to experience the music. And it's been talked a lot about how listening to music digitally, with digital downloads and streams, you're missing a lot of the things that actually go into it, because naturally the format compresses everything a bit too much. It just basically removes elements of the recording that were in the studio that were either put there on purpose or were beautiful accidents. But with things like records and tapes and CDs, that's sort of conserved a little bit more. CDs, I believe, are the best at that, and I believe it was Howard Stern or another guy. What's his name? Eddie Rock something. Some radio guy involved in the music industry said something that like CDs are the absolute best format, and I would agree with that. I think listening to a good old classic CD is the best way to experience it. I think in terms of vibes, records are definitely the best because you pop it on, you put it on there, you drop the little needle, and you hear that, and then all of a sudden, boom, music. I think that's pretty cool. I think records are my favorite, but CDs are the best. And tapes are cool, and so, yeah. Anyway, that's my Hall of Fame. I bought that thing, and it's awesome, and I love it. And listening to this tape through it is one of my favorite things now, and I can't wait to listen to more tapes through it. So, let's get into today's topic, shall we? This one I think might be another long one. We will see. I don't think so, but I just said I thought. All right. We are expecting illiteracy from me at this point, so I don't know what to tell you. But the topic is, why did Broken City get so good all of a sudden? And this question was asked by the sponsor of this episode. He had a whole list of questions that he just hadn't gotten the chance to leave in the comments. And I picked this one because I think it's really interesting, because you can go about it so many different ways. Broken City's success, you can put on the members, you can put it all on Mike Jackson, you can put it on the show design with Adam Watts, you can put it on the sort of hipster approach to these drum corps shows. It's more modern. There's a lot of different avenues, and I think my overall stance is that it's a combination of everything. So why don't we go back in time and talk about OCI 2014? Well, let's talk about 2013 first. So Orange County Independent, if you don't know, is Broken City, but before Broken City. And I'll get into how that whole thing happened in a little bit. But Orange County Independent 2013 was an open class indoor drumline ensemble. And I believe George ran it. George was my guy over at Dark Sky. And I talked about him a couple episodes ago about his hands. So he was running, by the way, I'm going to reference my notes a lot because I wrote a lot. He was over there, and they were an open class group. And a lot of big names were in OCI 2013, like Kaito, Zach Hollander, a few just like if you go watch OCI 2013, because you see some faces in there that you're just like, oh, they're some of the greats of like the Blue Devils and the RCCs. And you should definitely check OCI 2013 out. I don't think they get enough credit. But after the 2013 season, Mike Jackson was brought onto the organization. George went to Dark Sky. A few people followed, like my buddy Esteban, who marched OCI 2013. He went over to Dark Sky in 2014, and that's side tangent. That's where Dark Sky basically got their, glow up. They started off in open. They got bumped to World in 2014, and that's how they got put on my radar, which is why I marched there. But anyway, Mike Jackson shows up at OCI in 2014, and it is a clear difference of show design, style, mechanics, and all that. And we can go into the Mike Jackson style in a different video. But they also just decided we're going to go to world class. So in contrast to Dark Sky's process of getting bumped by the judges and then continuing on in world class, OCI just signed up. They're now in world class, which I think is both strategic and dangerous. When I was in high school, another side tangent, that happened to us. Excuse me, my goodness. We were in A class, and then I believe it was, before my senior year, we just decided, all right, let's compete in open. And we were good enough. We did fairly successful. But it was scary because it's like a whole new ball game. It's easy to be good and dominate in A class, but you still got to teeter that line of not getting bumped, because as soon as your A class show gets bumped to open, you're screwed. Unless you change something huge and you can't play your watered down book. It's very, very hard to win A class while still not getting bumped. So anyway, OCI is in world class now. And I went back and watched 2014. By the way, I think OCI was like OCI 2014 was one of the very first lots I recorded. And I don't know if the recording is still up. I remember it being very dark. I don't know if I uploaded it. It could still be on there. But I believe that was like the very first lot that I just like brought out the camera. And it was they were at a show that my high school was at. And when I was watching their show, a lot of the elements reminded me of a Box 6 show. And the few things that did that were they had like the singing in it, which wasn't necessarily a Box 6 thing. Box 6 was more about narration and sound effects. And they had a lot of melodic singing, but they had this sort of trade-off of instruments that would remind you of a Box 6 show. Like nothing was super rhythmically advanced. They weren't pushing ideas. It was just tenor drums have 8 bars. Ooh, bass drums come in with a swell for another 8 bars. And here comes the snare voice, full ensemble. That's a very, very easy formula to build a show, and Box 6 follows that formula a lot with sort of the melodic stuff going on in the front ensemble and with the narration and building that show idea. But OCI 2014 pretty much had that same formula. It was very, very different from what you would see now from Mike Jackson. But without putting words into his mouth, I think it was sort of like a safe approach to this new entrance to world class, and with him, kind of heading everything over there now. And I think what it all came down, I believe they got 14th that year, so they made finals, which was huge for them, their first year in world class to make finals. They got 14th, I believe. And they were still like a young organization. There were still some really, really big names over there. Like they had like Landon, they had Tyler Doan, and they had like Alexis over there. They had a lot of the people that you're used to seeing in Broken City. They were there that year. And where was I going with that? But yeah, they were still kind of a young organization. But the members were strong. And I think that's what carried them into finals that year, was they had a pretty good basic show design that was entertaining. The music was pretty cool. They sounded pretty good. They were pretty clean. They had strong members over there. And I think 14th, that like 12th to 14th place range is pretty fitting for that ensemble. But then you had the following year, which was 2015, which was Bloom. And that was the introduction to the trilogy. It was the introduction to the new sound, Adam Watts, so the new approach, take with a grain of salt, because even OCI 2015 is vastly different from Broken City 2016 and the Broken City ensembles to follow. They used the ideas that they were going to stick to going forward, but that show itself was pretty rough. And it was pretty rough. I might ruffle some feathers here. First, I'll preface this. Every member that marched that year are extremely talented, and I know some of them. However, I think as a whole, that was just a weaker year from a member standpoint compared to the prior year. And what also I saw happen was a little bit of like a staff rearrangement. So I think the number one position that sort of is responsible for a lot of the battery's success and its performance on the floor is whoever's kind of in that battery manager position. And with the Mike Jackson Empire is what I'm going to call it. You have like Veronica in that, and you have like Roger. Those two I've always seen as the battery guys and girl. Those are like, when I think of Broken City Battery, I think of Veronica and Roger. And you didn't have that team in 2014. They had another guy. Veronica was there as a quad tag, I believe. But I think they had a different battery manager, and Roger, I don't believe, was over there. I could totally be wrong. I don't see him in the videos, and I'm not fact checking any of this, but I don't think Roger was over there. Anyway, going to 2015, Roger was there for sure because I saw him in videos. And I believe that was when also Veronica stepped into a bigger role over there. And Veronica is great. I've never been instructed under her directly, but she was over in Mandarin's 2013 when I was there, and so I heard a lot of the things, and then just hearing things like through Josh and other people I know that march Broken City. Like she's pretty good, and she's extremely knowledgeable, and she knows how to put that information, put that information out there for you to soak up. It's one thing to have the information, but if you also don't know how to tell that information, you're useless. Veronica does a great job at being able to like dissect the hands, fix rhythms, and Roger the same thing. Roger's intelligent, and it shows in everything that they do in all their successful ensembles. But anyway, 2015, they were over there, but what was lacking was, like I mentioned, some of the weaker members, and the book itself. It sort of felt like a rock show. They were playing a lot of straightforward 16-note rhythms, and not very well either. And so I think that ultimately was the downfall of that year. They did not make finals that year, which was probably pretty eye-opening for them. It was kind of eye-opening for everyone because here's OCI now, brand new to World Class, making finals their very first year in World Class, and then now not so much. And another thing to highlight that year was a lot of the members from 2014 left. The three that I know specifically for sure are Joe Real, Tyler Doan, and Alexis. Alexis came over to Dark Sky. I marched with her in 2015 at Dark Sky. Tyler and Joe both went over to Pulse. Those are the three I'm highlighting. There probably was a couple more, but those are the ones off the top of my head I can remember. Oh, I gotta press record. Someday I'll get a better camera and it won't stop recording after 20 minutes. Anyway, so yeah, they had a few members leave and some members stayed, and that year was just sort of off for them. But it was the start of the sort of identity of Broken City in using like Adam Watts as a main show component, and just the look of them. That sort of was the beginning of that. Let's see, I got some more notes here. Yep. Okay, yeah, we're done talking about 2015. So from there, you're sort of like writing OCI off. You're kind of like, okay, well, they had a really good, strong year in World Class, and now they're kind of dipping low World Class, and they're sort of not interesting anymore. Well, boom. One of the biggest things to ever happen in the activity, I don't know if that's true, but I remember it being extremely interesting and sort of like, ooh, what's this? It was the Broken City rebrand. So you could think about this two ways. You could think about it as OCI changing their name to Broken City and then reintroducing Orange County Independent as an open class group. Or the way I like to think about it is Broken City Percussion is a brand new organization, and OCI has fallen back to open class. And the reason it doesn't really matter how you think about it is it's all under OCI. It's all the same mother, parent organization. And you had another A class group, I believe. I can't remember what they were called. Was that Vessel? No. Is Vessel different? I don't remember. I think it was. No. I'm going to have to fact check that at some point. But you had now the introduction of Broken City, and OCI is back in open class. Well, I remember that specifically because obviously Mike Jackson is the head of Broken City. Like that is his baby, and that's why I think about it as its own separate organization and not just a rebrand of OCI, because it was a creation and not so much a direction change. It was like, this is Broken City. This is an entirely like new logo, new name, new color palette, new show design, new approach. Like it's its own entity, but it's just being funded by the OCI, organization. And I remember that specifically because that was when my buddy Josh started marching independent, and he was in that first year of Broken City, and it was exciting. It was pretty cool, and so I look at that as sort of their debut. Like it was a Broken City debut, and not so much an OCI direction change. And I think that goes into their sort of like success. It was exciting and it was brand new, and it was as if John and Ian left Pulse, but Pulse Percussion sort of was still a thing with entirely new staff, and then John and Ian built this brand new organization and just like left behind, and we're just going to move forward with their new ideas and all that. Bit of a stretch of a comparison, but basically this whole new year of Broken City was kind of like the start of the Mike Jackson K-Shaw empire. And this introduced something that sort of revolutionary to modern drumming in this activity. And that was the emphasis on using motifs. And if you're not sure what that is, you know it, because I'm sure you've made fun of it, but it's the use of the same rhythm or same idea of a rhythm over and over and over again. While it can be boring and monotonous, it can be done well, and Broken City did it really, really freaking well. And you remember it, it's the that's the motif. And it was played out throughout other instruments in the ensemble throughout the show. The marimbas did the dun 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 dun, like they were doing it, and then also just the fivelet thing with the space, and it sort of just like it brought a whole new approach to marching music composition. It no longer was the basic pit entrance, nice and soft. We're doing visuals, light tenor voice coming in, send it to the bass drums with the fuzzes, and then snare voice. Like it deviated from the basic formula that everyone was doing, and that was working for a really long time. But then it just you got to push forward. People have new ideas, and they're going to do them, and they're going to be successful or they're going to fail. And this was one of those times where they were pushing other ideas, wasn't really going well. They went this route, and it exploded. And I think it was refreshing. Obviously, the judges loved it because that, like, hell, okay, OCI, their first year, 2014 in World Class, finalist, 14th place. Broken City, their very first year as an organization existing, bronze medal. I think that is substantial. Now, the reason for the success in 2016, I believe it is the combination of the refinement of the Broken City, like Mike Jackson, K-Shaw empire. He has his go-to guys. Everyone, they work well together. They're all on the same page with approach and what's best, big picture, like macro decisions and down to the micro decisions. They're on the same page, and that's extremely important to be successful. when you like less clashing of staff members across the sections, it's flawless, and it's like a symphony of teaching. So you have that. You have the staff members that they got themselves dialed in and were able to really teach this show a way that they were all going to agree on, a way that was going to be easy for the members to understand. And it was easy for the members to invest into what they were teaching. That's one thing I don't think a lot of people talk about. And I think it was Rich that really used this a lot when he was teaching me, was you have to sort of like trust your staff members. You know, it's sometimes you just got to swallow your pride and just trust that the staff that is in front of you talking to you is going to know a little bit more than you, and you have to trust them, and you have to trust their process, and you have to invest into them to be successful. And I think a lot of people kind of forget that, and that's where you have things like just members refusing to do like what the staff members think is best because they have their own ideas. And it's like, okay, dude, you're the one wearing the drum. Like, I get it, you're paying a lot of money to be here, and you've got your way, but like you're now sabotaging the group when you think that way. But anyway, enough of that tangent. You have the members of 2016 really, investing into the show and believing into it. And I'm going to skip a few points here down to my last point, but that is where you also get just the genuine performance of them. You watch a show that another group does, and you have the teeth. You're like, yeah, shot. Like, chack, 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 boom. I'm so cool. But then you had Broken City that would use that same energy and that same performance, but my God, it would be down at the little buzz roll at the gut edge. Like, you could feel their little uhs. Like, it was like they had that aura about them, and it was because they were invested into the show. They believed what they were doing. They were, they were working together with the staff members, and it was a product that everyone was proud of, and that absolutely showed in the performance. And in the performance itself, that's a massive part of the score. Like, you can play the dopest snare break. It could be clean as hell, but if you're just like, shack don't marching away, that's like, there's, whoa, good job, clean triple rolls, but then it's like you have that emotion, and we're, humans by nature, we are able to have those connections emotionally. And if you can do that with if you could do that genuinely and it's real, and I can tell that it's real, I'm going to be into it way more, because I can see when things are forced and I can see when things are real. And I think the judges that year, they saw a real, performance. And I think that went a long way. And so now going back, the members themselves, huge, and I mean absolutely huge names in that group that year. Like, you had people coming from Pulse and RCC to Broken City. And a few of them followed Mike, because Stephen Herman, he played bass drum. I believe he went to Chino High School, which is where Mike taught for a number of years, and so there was already that relationship, and so that's important to have in these groups, is when there's loyalty, because that goes hand in hand with trusting the staff. If you know the staff member, you've had that relationship for years, you're going to trust them a little bit more. And so they were able just to put together an ensemble over there that was undeniable. That's about as world-class as anything gets. And people in the front ensemble too. Like, you had, I believe that was the year they did the dual drum sets, and you had You had the two guys. Was Tiger was his name, and I can't remember the other guy, but I believe the other guy came from RCC, and he's a BD guy, and so you had just phenomenal percussionists all in one setting with a package that they all believed in and they all performed with 100% passion and effort every single time, and was just tits, dude. It was so good. And, with all of that, you had the introduction of sort of this like Adam Watts, show design. And naturally, Adam Watts' music is very emotional, and it is something that you can get into emotionally. Like his music by itself is something that you can just really like soak in and just close your eyes and appreciate. And then you pair that with everything else I just said, it's a no-brainer. And let me replace this battery real quick. God damn it. Eventually we will get a camera that'll work flawlessly and I won't have to interrupt anything. But for now, we're making it work. But yeah, so Adam Watts' music by itself is just like I got into that music for a while because of Broken City, and it just makes you feel some kind of way, and it's good. And so you had all of that working together, and it is just like, because then you also, going back to the members that were a part of that, like Joe and Tyler came back, Alexis came back, and so you had already just an investment by the members that a lot of organizations sometimes lack, because whether you're using an organization as a stepping stone, or you're just sort of there because you like, I want to be higher world class, so I feel like I should be marching here, and that's just not as genuine. But you have the members of Broken City, and I'm not saying every organization is like that. Members really mostly believe in what they do, and they're excited to be there in that organization, and they do a great job. But I think just as a whole, more members of that year in Broken City 2016 were a bit more invested and a bit more, trustworthy, and, well, not trustworthy, but trusting of the process. Trust the process. That a lot of organizations were missing. But yeah, so another thing is just like the show design. So like I mentioned, you had that whole Adam Watts thing, and it was popular to use music and sort of use a storyline for the show. Box 6 has been doing it for years. They've got their themes, and you can't deny Broken City's approach to that thing. They basically took something that everyone's been doing for years, then they spun it a different way to make it interesting again. And then while they had that basic, storyline with using Adam Watts' music, musically, it complemented each other. So it, like, with other shows that use narration and they use effects, it oftentimes is just sort of like a call and answer thing. It's like snare drums, play, and stop, sample, and tenor break, and then shot boom, narration, full ensemble moment. Like, it's a very just sort of straightforward cookie cutter thing. But with Broken City, they did things in and around Adam Watts' music that just kept it kind of in this like fluid motion of, like going forward through the show. Their shows feel more like organic and flowy, whereas any other show that sort of uses the same elements but is a little bit more older, like old school. It's a very just like boop 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 boop. It's like a, oh my God, this is hard to talk about. This is hard to convey this feeling, but like it just makes sense. It feels like you're listening to a song or an album versus watching a drumline show, because not only the music composition works, but like the music, the performance by them, and the visual aspect, it all just fits perfectly. And with the use of motifs, the thing with that is when you listen to like a pop song, you get your intro, you get your verse, maybe the chorus, but maybe it goes back to the intro again, another verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro. Well, how many times do you hear that chorus? And how many times do the verses, even though they're using different words, how they sound the same? But that chorus is exactly the same. So the thing with what Broken City did is they established their own sort of chorus. They had things that they went back to that you could remember, that you could get into, because you're like, oh yeah, wow, they're doing that again? Dude, musically that fits. Like, they treat their shows as a piece of music and not so much just movements and a story and big drumline moment, snare break, full ensemble, double stop end. Like it's just, there's a thought process and there's a connection between just inside the show in Broken City stuff, and it's more relatable because you're used to listening to music to where all of those elements are there as well. You hear the same melody over and over and over again, and it's catchy, and that's what allows you to remember the song, and it's what allows you to really enjoy the song because now you've learned it, and you can sing the words yourself, and how the song's going to go. And while that could sometimes get in the way of creativity, if done right, like what Broken City does, it's very, very effective. And with all that, you now have this new approach to what a snare break should be. And this is probably one of the coolest things, I think, that they do is Roger's approach to a snare break. So we all know the snare breaks that, they fit in the show, and usually how the snare breaks work is like snare drums are plain, but with the front ensemble, maybe a few little elements from other things, but it's mainly a snare moment. And then there's a big swell, and then you have like a solid 4 bars of a ram. So it's like, it's like building, and you have ding, 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 ding. And then all of a sudden it's, and it was like, whoa, snare break. With Broken City, everything stops. And you have the snare drums play. It's just like there's nothing happening, and it's just the snares moving around the floor in very, very non-traditional ways, different people moving, different interweavings, different, like it's not just like a freaking, this line moves this way, this line moves this way. Wow, we're cutting it in half and going back and forth. And, it's like they're doing things that are in itself, and people are kneeling, well, people are not. And you have pretty much complete silence, maybe a little bit of like ambience, like, ooh, just like playing. And now it's like, and then they end. And then it's just like, you then get a breath of fresh air, because you're like, wow, I had to soak all of that in. And then they start again, and they go with the next idea of the show. And just that approach to a snare feature and to a solo moment like that is not what anybody does. It's always just the basic snare entrance, build up, swell, 4 bars of a ram, a shot to end it, and then we're moving on again. The pit comes back in and we're going. But they really had the idea of making it a solo. Like this is a very clear moment for the snare drums, and it's hard and it's advanced and it's complex, and you need to pay attention to it and you need to remember it, and we're going to give you time after they play it to remember it and sit there and go, wow, and then we'll get going again. And just that idea of itself, I think that plays a huge part into their general effects score and their percussion like performance score, because the content of what they play is crazy. I remember like usually I think the process was like, if you're auditioning for Broken City, you get like a little audition piece, and that was sort of like a rough idea of what that snare break was going to end up being. And I remember like Josh got it and played it, and I was like, holy God, Jesus. At the time I was like, oh wow, that's a crazy audition piece, like that's hard. And then a couple weeks later he's like, yeah, this is our snare break, and I was like, oh my God, dude. But yeah, it's just the composition of it all and just the ideas that they have is like, Jesus, it was new. And they branded themselves well too. They had the colors that they used, and just the drums and how they worked with the uniforms and their floor, and their props. It just like the overall brand of them. Like, do you ever just see something and you're like, oh, I get it? Like you look at it and you're like, I get it. Whereas other things you might like, I don't really get the thing, but then like you like use the product or you like look at it and you're like, okay, yeah, cool. With them, you just look at them and you're like, oh, yep, that's it. I got it. Broken City, here to throw down. I understand right away. And it's like, that goes a long way. But yeah, and so I wrote this little side note here, going back to just sort of the members themselves, and like loyalty. 2014, Mike Jackson also showed up to Blue Knights, and I'd say like a solid 85 to 90% of the members of OCI and Broken City were all also marching Blue Knights. Everyone followed Mike over to Blue Knights, and that is very important because, you know, while you have the basic pairings like Pulse, like back in the day, Pulse and Blue Coats, Blue Coats sometimes RCC also, but mainly like Blue Devils RCC. Now it's extremely apparent because RCC is a Blue Devils organization. You had those pairings, but the ideas were still different. You saw some parallels between RCC and Blue Devils back in the day, but RCC was still a little bit more free-flowy, less rigid than what you would see coming out of a Blue Devils drumline. And then the opposite with Pulse, you know, marching on Tilt, they were very free-flowy and all that. And then you go over to, I guess not opposite, it's the exact same thing. Then you like Blue Coats, they're a little bit more rigid, but still a better sort of organic approach. Also, side tangent, I believe Mike was at Blue Coats for a number of years too, before BK. I think that's where he was at before. I don't think he was running things over there. I think he just had a pretty strong hand in all of that. But then like Roger was over there too. And so yeah, you just have all these connections. And so with the prominent connection being Broken City and Blue Knights, you have the same members drumming together themselves. So you're spending an entire summer with these people, then you're going to spend an entire WGI season with these people, and then with the same people, with the exception of a few age outs and a few new members, you're going to then spend the next summer with them. And so you've already drummed together with the same people, And it is just, it's like you just know. It's easy to drum next to someone when you've been drumming next to them for 2 years already. And this happened, my personal experience, this happened in high school when Josh and our buddy Alan and I, we were the three in the snare line my junior year, and then we were the same three in the snare line my senior year. And my senior year was tits because of it. We had already been drumming together that entire year before. And we did things in my senior year of high school that like had everyone like, oh my God. Like I remember like sort of like the Buena snare line was sort of, kind of little, but like kind of on the map a little bit, at least in our like local area. Like a lot of people, they came out to watch us because they probably knew, like they knew Paul, like my instructor. They knew him because they either went to a school that he was already teaching at, or like some different alumni. But like we were like, we hit the drum pretty well with the help of Rich. He sort of taught me how to play the drum like a man. But like I can understand and I can relate to when you just drum next to the same person for a certain amount of time, it just becomes easy to drum next to them. And you don't have to work out the little kinks that a lot of people spend the beginning of the seasons working out. Those are already gone. Those haven't been around since 2 seasons ago when they were new members, And so you have just this like, you're building this empire, essentially. It's just these people that, can drum well together, that have been drumming well together. And it's undeniable to a certain point, But yeah, I believe Mike's not over there anymore, I believe. So it'll be interesting. I think he wants to focus solely on Broken City. I could be wrong. I'm putting words into his mouth again. But I know that that's now going to change. I don't think he's doing DCI anymore. At least for now, there's no one. So yeah, the whole Broken City Blue Knights thing, that could continue, but Blue Knights, I believe, is now going back to a little bit more of an East Coast vibe. They've got like a Phantom guy over there now, and Madison Scouts, and a lot of people from Phantom in the staff, and so it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think they're going to go back to the whole toe closed mark time, and we'll see. But we haven't been able to see that because that was going to be for the 2020 season. So we shall see about that. But that was Broken City 2016, the bronze medal debut year. Just people invested into the product and trusting of their staff, and undeniable. I get that word from George. You want to be undeniable. Broken City 2017, I believe they got the silver medal that year. So they're climbing. They're working their way up. But the main thing with that is everyone came back. You had 2017, it's just, you had a few people age out from 2016. You had mostly everyone come back into 2017, and then the members that they added into 2017 were pretty damn good. And so they've sort of set this standard now where, one, they don't have a ton of spots to fill, so they're not desperate for members, and they can be really, really picky at that point. And so they're going to bring in people that clearly can handle the gig and that are going to do well, and they're going to mesh well, and are drumming well together. And that goes probably the longest way. Just being able to rebuild your ensemble after, members have aged out or left and still just be that successful. It's nuts. And here's where I go back into the whole motif thing. So you had 2015 Bloom, and you had 2016, don't remember was it Caged? Or was that 2017? I don't remember. But then you had the 2017 year, and that was the trilogy. So in 2017, you're now familiar with 2 prior years from the same group, 15 being OCI, sort of like the ugly stepchild. But you now have this very, very clear understanding. It's like it's now you're listening to an album. This is now the same band, and you've played 3 songs, and they all are on the same album, and they all fit together. It's the same sound. It's the use of the motifs. You're getting new motifs, but it's all the same structure. You've got the snare break that is completely by itself, that just has your jaw dropped, and it all works. And of course, I can't talk about 2017 without talking about the left-hand shots. That got everyone wild because no one does that. Zoom. Bop. Bop. Like it just... What? You're going to do that? You're just going to do that. That right there, you did. No one else does that. And I remember their first time doing that, everyone lost their minds. People are losing their minds a lot. And it's just like, my God. That year was extremely important for me, because I spent a lot of time with that group. I did like the day with them, and I was in a lot of their lots, and I recorded like the inside of their show. They gave me the media pass, and I recorded their show for them and all that. And that show was the main inspiration for my INEs. If you watch that show and then you watch my first INE that I did, it's like it's all the same. It's the same rhythms. And once I wrote it, I actually, like, one of the very few times I actually get permission to use things, I reached out to Mike Jackson and I said, "Hey, I'm using a lot of your writing in my INE. Is that cool?" And he's like, "Yeah, dude, good luck." But I did that whole, I mean, everyone's seen my INE, they know. And so I'm going to reset this again because it's going to stop and I hate this. Go Dodgers. Yeah, what was I saying? So yeah, just that that was my huge inspiration. Because I felt like, well, yeah, we'll go off on another little tangent here. We all know the story about my 2-year-long INE experiment. I felt that what everyone was doing, by the way, this problem has not been solved. I just proved it, and then now it's still happening. But whatever your opinions are on INE, my opinion probably differs. I think the INE setting is a good place for individual musicians to really show off their musicality and their own ideas. However, you don't see that a lot from the sort of leading INEs, the top 3. You just see a lot of notes. You see a lot of fast rhythms. You do see some cool things, but it's mostly just extremely relatable to what they're doing in their bigger picture ensemble. So, for example, you see the SCV guys drumming basically SCV notes. You see the Blue Devils guys drumming just like the Blue Devils. And my approach was that I wanted to be a little bit less flashy, a little bit dumber. I hate to use that word, but I didn't want complex rhythms, fast notes. I wanted something that made you sort of understand the flow, and I wanted, whoever was watching to really sort of understand the meaning and feel the snare drum. And so I used a lot of the same motifs that Mike does with all of the Broken City stuff. I used a lot of the same rhythms. I played back to those rhythms back and forth. And I also made sure that I didn't end it the way everyone else ends it. I ended with a super long buzz roll because I wanted you to question something. I wanted you to sit there and go, is he going to play something else after this? Is he, how long has he played this buzz roll for? Oh, he's done? Oh, okay. Like I wanted that reaction. That was a purposeful thing. I didn't want to end it just like, great. Let's watch the next guy do the exact same thing. Like I didn't want that. I wanted something different. So that was, because Mike Jackson, a lot of the times those Broken City shows, they don't end that way either. They might have a big ensemble moment that ends, but then they always go, and complete the show. It's now complete. And so, yeah, I'll keep talking about myself for a little bit. It was very clear that that's not how INEs should go. Because I got 11th the year I did that, and I knew that was going to happen. I was disappointed. I thought I might have been done a little bit better, but I knew. I wasn't expecting 5th. I was maybe 6th. But no, I got 11th, and I said, okay, well, guess what? Next year, I'll do exactly what you want. And that's why I called it, Is This Better? This was a direct hit at the judges. Like, this was for sure, like, I'm playing your game here. And I got 3rd. So, under SEV and Blue Devils, guys. And that's like, I think that explains a lot about the judging of INE. But I won't go into that much further. Back to Broken City. Yeah, so it's just to sum it all up, they really, really, really found the formula. And that word is bounced around a lot in the activity. Box 6 has their formula. RCC seems to have their formula, although it feels like it changes every year. Obviously the Blue Devils have their formula. Rhythm X, they've got their formula. It's you can see. While I praise Broken City for how advanced they are and with pushing these ideas and how different they are, you can still see the trends, and you can still see a Broken City show and go, yep, that's Broken City. The next year, yep, that's Broken City. So everyone has their formula, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but when you ask the question, why did Broken City become so successful so quickly, is because loyalty from the members, meaning members that stick around and members that trust their staff, the empire that Mike Jackson has built with staff members that all work extremely well together, the show design, and understanding how it is different from what everyone does. It's refreshing. It's a breath of fresh air that the judges can really sit down and go, wow, that made me feel something. I get it. And just the overall brand of them. They all carry themselves extremely well, just that they're there to be artists, and just 100% from performer to viewer to staff member, everyone just gets it. It's that simple. And that's their formula. And when you have someone pushing ideas and pushing, the norms in a way that is beautiful and interesting, that is going to be successful. Without a doubt, that is going to work. It's when you have people that push ideas that are a little bit out there that you're just like, what? That's not how we do things. While they may not get the respect in that very moment, they might later. There maybe, that's where you get like ahead of their time sort of thing. Those just aren't successful. And with Broken City, they were able to push ideas and things about modern marching percussion that just worked and that everyone was able to, get on board with, because it wasn't too outlandish It wasn't, anything extreme, but it was new enough to go, oh yeah, I like that. I'm into that. That's not really what the next ensemble or the last ensemble did. Like, yeah, I'm into that. And so I think that's where that comes from. And it might get old because now you're seeing groups do it more. You have like Vessel, who I think they're related. That I think they're in the OCI organization as well. Maybe not. Maybe they're separate. But it's a lot. It's sort of like the Broken City feeder because I think Steven is over there, and like Matt, I believe he's over there. I could just totally not be remembering these names. I was so much better at names a few years ago. I've now forgotten everybody. But yeah, these just sum it all up. They found the formula and it worked. So, will it get old? Maybe. Will somebody need to come up with something new and start dominating? Probably. Probably not recent and probably not, soon. I think Broken City can write off this for a long time. They got gold one year. Was that 2018? Or was it 2019? I know they've won, right? But yep, that's that. That's that topic. Interested to hear what you have to say. What are your thoughts about Broken City? What's your take on the whole show design? So just the overall feeling of the show. Is it boring? Is it played out? Are they not, playing by the rules essentially? Or is it cool? Is it refreshing? Is it what the activity needs? Let me know. I want to know. Oh, that was a good topic. I enjoyed talking about that. I probably missed a lot of things and probably said a lot of dumb things, but I thought it was pretty cool. I love talking about that kind of stuff, and that's gonna lead me into talking about a topic for an episode coming up that I really, really want to spend the time to research and do a lot of preparation for it. And it's the topic of the differing show designs between West Coast and East Coast, but then also breaking down the West Coast into Pulse, RCC, and Broken City, because all three are vastly different in of itself, even though they're 20 miles apart from each other. I want to talk about that, but I really, really want to prepare for that one, and I want to make that one good with examples and use video and all that. So that's coming up. But to close it out, I've got one Q&A question. Everything else I think I can use for sort of bigger topics for full videos, but this one is short enough, and it's from my dad, of course. And he wants to know, what are your thoughts on marching coming out of this pandemic? Do you think it will go off like normal, or with restrictions, with fans, core size, and so on? What about the size of the activity itself? Will it grow due to it being shut down for a period of time? And his guess is that it takes off as soon as everything starts to open. So the first part of that question, my thoughts on the activity coming out of the pandemic. Well, I don't know if anything's going to really change. I think a lot of people are just going to want to go back to what was happening before. So I think nothing's really going to, be new. But will it go off like normal or with restrictions? So I think it'll go off as normal as it possibly can in terms of how the shows are performed and written and rehearsals and all that. I think that's all just going to be normal. That's It's very clear how things sort of work in the activity, and I don't think anything's going to really change with that. But restrictions with fans, that's interesting because I feel like by the time drum corps comes back, the thing with, if you relate, okay, so drum corps is played in football stadiums. Now, if you relate drum corps to a football game, it's about a quarter of the size of fans, right? You have basically the whole front of the stands are occupied by drum corps fans. You don't have that surround because shows are boring from the back. So you just have that front. Now, I think what we might see in the beginning is still an effort to put some social distancing in the stands. I don't know if it'll be like, you might just have people not wanting to go to drum corps shows in the very beginning just because they're expecting, people to be really close to each other sitting in the stands. So it might naturally just not, be that difficult to socially distance. But I do think they're going to have some sections taped off where you can't sit, and you can't sit directly next to people you don't know or that aren't in your bubble. I could see that happening at the very beginning, at least until stadiums, like sports events, are at full capacity with no masks and no restrictions and all that. And we'll probably see the same rule. And because the thing with that is they still have to work with the cities to put on these shows. So if like the governor is saying, yeah, your college football game can only be, with, 1,500 people, well, of course, they're not going to let a drum corps show just operate as normal. There's going to be some talk and into that, and the DCI is going to have to talk to the city about what they're doing and all that. So I do think with fans, there will be some restrictions, probably masks, a little bit of social distancing, probably no concessions. And as far as corps size, I don't think they can do that. It would be pretty shocking to me if drum corps' approach to this was to limit the amount of people that could march. I can't see a Blue Devils ensemble being any less than 150 people. That would look weird. It would be funny. Some of the lower world class corps, they barely reach up to 130, 120. So they would be fine if that was the case. But no, I don't think corps size will be affected. The problem with that, though, is that corps transportation might be difficult if they're wanting to be restrictive. The thing with drum corps, though, is it's its own bubble, and so you could just have everyone show up, move-ins, get COVID tested, check the temperature, make sure everyone's all good, and then you create your bubble of 150 people plus kitchen plus staff and all that. And that's like the problem with that, though, is then you're still bouncing from school to school, and you've got people like the custodial staff or the principals or whatever, like letting people into the school, and you're naturally just around other outside people. So I don't know. That's a tough one to call. I think corps size will still be 150 max. I think can't really deviate from that. But corps transportation will definitely be affected, I think, in some sort of way. Size of the activity itself, will it grow due to it being shut down for a period of time? I don't know. It's not like this whole thing put it on the map. I think maybe some people that were taking their years for granted might end up marching. Like some people are like, oh, well, just maybe I'll march drum corps, maybe I won't. I think now it's like, okay, I got to do it before I age out. So you might see some interest there. Some people that may not have jumped at the thought of marching will probably end up marching. I'm curious to see what the age rules are going to be now, because you now have 2 years gone. There's 2 groups of age outs that didn't get their age out. And that, I don't know what they're going to do. If they're going to extend it, like 2021 age outs can March 2022 if they want. Are they going to let 2020 age outs March 2022? If this goes into 2023, what are they going to do? It's like, Jesus. I mean, sorry to everyone else, but I'm really glad I aged out before this. Because this sucks. Could not imagine sitting there just watching your age out year go by. It's rough. I already did that with my indoor year, so I can't imagine how it feels. But I don't know if it'll grow any more than already in its inner circle. I think in terms of the public interest, I think it's still kind of growing at that steady rate that it already has been, just with like word of mouth, just like with family members that, their loved ones are marching. So then they're like, what is this? Why do you need my check? Why do you need me to donate $1,000 to this thing that you're doing? Oh, okay. I'll go to a show and I'll check it out. Oh, wow. Let me tell my friends about this crazy thing that my grandson's doing. I think just the word of mouth sort of spread in the public it's been consistent, and I think it'll just continue. I don't see any sort of rapid growth happening. But yeah, you're guessing that it takes off as soon as everything starts to open. I think it takes off within the activity itself. I think a lot of people will be excited to march again, and some people are going to be willing to, risk some things in order to march. The financials and other limitations will probably, not be worried about as much. But yeah, I think it'll just continue to grow at the pace that it has been. But I mean, hey, Boston is doing that thing over in Ireland next St. Patrick's Day in an attempt to grow the activity a little bit more. So who knows? We'll see. I don't even like if it'd be funny. Like, I know they're out there, but those fans that like didn't march anywhere or had no idea what the activity was, but then become drum corps fans, there's a few out there. There's a few, fans that are just straight up fans. They are not alumni. They are not musicians. They did not march anywhere, but then it's like, oh, I'm into this. Sort of like my dad. He became a fan just from watching me. But no, you have those people that don't even have anybody in the activity that are just into it, which is cool. Very few though, but they're out there. We got to the end and I realized I didn't do a moccasin check, so I gotta write myself reminders. I need like a little notification thing. Well, hell, that's what notes are for. But anyway, moccasin check. All right, I think that sums up episode 7 of Monday Morning Moccasins. Like I said, if you want to support the show, you could buy me a cup of coffee. Just Venmo at Monday Morning Moccasins, whatever you want. And you're funding my unhealthy caffeine addiction. So thanks a lot in advance to that. And yeah, that's about it for tonight. I think I'll just see you next time on episode 8 of Monday Morning Moccasins. Cue outro music.